everybody. My name is Kyle, and welcome to the Old Glory Games podcast. And this episode is going to be one that I am very, very familiar with. Greg, I know I'm going to go ahead and brag first by putting this on the screen there. I'm sure that looks familiar.
Nice.
Those are my three. Those are my three dusty fantasy football trophies. We'll get into how many you have. It's more than those. But I love fantasy football, and actually was a commissioner, I believe, for almost 20 years in one form or fashion. The league that we did it, or at least 15 years, I think.
Right.
And a lot of fun, a lot of competitiveness. So I didn't even prep for this one at all. I didn't prep at all because I feel, even though I've been out of fantasy football for about 3 or 4 years, I pretty much know just about everything there is to know about the minutia and how it works. There are various variations, whatever there is. I've even done it prior to computers back in the old days when you had to show up at a bar and you had pen and paper and you could actually have a whiteboard. I've done that as well. So anyway, Greg, so let's talk about fantasy football. This was kind of something that you wanted to talk about. I'm happy to do it. Just to kick it off here, what's your biggest memory or favorite memory of fantasy football, and how does it also help enjoy the football season, or maybe prior to it being woke, but everything being equal? How does fantasy football and playing it also help with the actual enjoyment of the season?
Sure. So you and I have been friends for about 25 years, and I think one of our first interactions revolved around fantasy football, because I can remember, I think one of the first few times I talked to you, you asked me if I wanted to join the fantasy football league. And I think the first time you asked, I'm like, nah, I'm too busy, or whatever the other excuses I gave were. But I think the following season, I'm like, well, this sounds like fun. Yeah, let's give it a try. So that was back kind of like in the olden days where it wasn't too far removed from doing it on paper. And, you know, we had an ESPN league, and we had it for a lot of years. And the first couple of seasons were kind of rough for me because I was, you know, kind of learning the lay of the land, how it worked and strategy and all of that stuff. So I'll never forget, I made a very brutal mistake. So I think I was in the process of dropping some guys and adding some guys, you know, working the waiver wire. And my quarterback at the time was Peyton Manning. And back then, and we'll talk about this in a little bit about, you know, trends as far as, you know, who you should target when you do the drafts. But back then, having a top quarterback was king. That was, you know, the top thing. Yeah, it was very important to have a top tier quarterback. So I had Peyton Manning. So in the process of dropping some other guys, I accidentally dropped him.
I remember that.
And I'm like, oh no. So
I remember that.
You were the commissioner at the time. It's like, dude, what can I do? And you're like, well, unfortunately, and this was before, you know, the
waiver wire. We had a prevention. We had a preventative thing in there. We to prevent that from happening the following year. I forget what it was.
Yeah, guys, you can't cut. I mean, there are certain guys.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
I wish we had it then, but we didn't. So
yeah, that's right.
You're like,
well,
bad. Hopefully nobody will notice and won't pick them up. I knew that wasn't going to happen. So somebody immediately will probably first thought, what fool cut Peyton Manning? And too bad for him. I'm going to grab him. And that's what they did. So I think at that point, my record was pretty good. And it just plummeted after that. I'm like, okay, who can I go out here and scrounge around and get? So I wound up with John Kitna. And if you're asking who John Kitna is, that lets you know how far.
The Lions, right?
Yeah. That lets you know how far I fell as a result of my blunder.
Oh, man.
So I'll never forget that. And it sounds like you've never forgotten it either. But
no, I had, yeah.
But I mean, it's so much fun. We would get together at your house, and you had how many different computers up and running so everybody could do the draft at your house? I mean,
I do remember that. Yeah, that was crazy.
It was just so much fun. And the trash talking. I mean, I know you can virtually trash talk and chat now, but it's nothing like in person talking trash while you're doing the draft. Like if somebody messes up and drafts somebody that's out for the season, some guys have done that. or drafting guys that have retired. I'm like,
yeah. Oh yeah. That's right.
and you don't ever let that person hear the end of it. But I mean, just we had so much fun doing that, and the memories from that is just, I'll never forget them. But yeah, playing fantasy football is just so much fun, and just with friends and all of that, and again, that's kind of how our friendship started around fantasy football. So it's been a real great experience, for me. And I think fantasy football has done wonders for the NFL because I've got some numbers here. As of 2022, approximately 29.2 million people in the U.S. participated in fantasy football. And if I had to guess, it's probably even more than that now, making it the most popular fantasy sport in the country. ESPN alone, and we mentioned ESPN because that's where our league was, alone had 13 million users playing fantasy football in 2024, setting an all-time record for the platform. So what fantasy football does, it makes fans, and I use the term fan loosely, basically people that don't otherwise care about football. Now they do because they have a fantasy team and they want to watch games that they wouldn't otherwise watch to keep up with how their players are doing. So why else would somebody that aren't Jets or Dolphins fans watch a Jets Dolphins game unless they've got a fantasy player on one of those teams? And if I've offended Jets or Dolphins fans, I'm sorry, but over the past few years, your teams have not done well, so that's why I use them as an example. But fantasy football participants watch an average of 1.07 more NFL games per week than non-participants. So again, it goes back to how the NFL as a whole has benefited from the boom that is fantasy football. So, and when you think about sports packages like Sunday Ticket and NFL Red Zone, there's not a more awesome network on the planet and show on the planet than NFL Red Zone. If you play fantasy, it's perfect because you don't have to watch the games in their entirety. They're basically, and sometimes 4 and 5 games at once. Once a team gets into the red zone, you see it because that's what you care about. Scoring touchdowns, long runs, receptions, big plays. So for fantasy, that's what you care about. And red zone has got it for you. It's a cheaper alternative to Sunday Ticket. Now, I had Sunday Ticket for years. I think I started getting it when I was in Utah because I wanted to watch the Panthers, and that was the only way I could watch them. So I got Sunday Ticket, and as I was already in fantasy by then, so it was pretty useful when it came to playing fantasy. I've since dropped Sunday Ticket. I dropped it a few years ago. It was getting to be expensive, and I was put out with the NFL in general for reasons I'll touch upon briefly here in a minute. But NFL Red Zone suits my needs to a T as far as following games from a fantasy perspective. And, all of those things generate an excitement about the NFL, which I think would otherwise not be there because, quite frankly, the product has diminished. The league is trying to take a lot of the collisions and physicality out of the game, it's a different game. And we've touched on that during past episodes. But
it's NFL soft. Yeah, that first one we did.
But overall, especially if you're like a casual fan at best and, indifferent at worst, but you play fantasy and you watch the games because of that, the NFL doesn't care. All the better for them. So I touched upon, how big fantasy football is, how it's just this phenomenon, that's swept across the country. I'm going to touch briefly on how the trends have changed over the years and how you basically have to, if you want to be successful in season-long fantasy, you've got to pay attention to these things, because as the league has changed, so has fantasy football changed as far as what your priorities should be. So back when I started playing, back when you and I met, as I mentioned before, having a top quarterback was critical if you were going to be successful in fantasy. And then as the years went on, it shifted. You had to have basically a bell cow running back. You had to have a good running back or two, if you were lucky, in order to be successful. And then it kind of shifted. Well, you've got to have some stud wide receivers, at least one, if not two or three, if you were going to be successful. Now you're looking at it, you've got to have a multi-purpose back that gets a bunch of touches, and Christian McCaffrey's name rises to the top of the list. You got to have guys like that if you want to be successful. So the importance of the quarterback has kind of been de-emphasized over the years. I've won championships. I'm trying to think, one year that I won a championship, I had a quarterback that was just serviceable at best, but I still won because I had, running backs that got a bunch of yards and a bunch of touches. I had wide receivers that got a bunch of touches. And see, we had individual defensive players back then. So I would make sure I picked like all middle linebackers if I could, because they get the most tackles. And even
London Fletcher, man.
London
Fletcher.
Yeah. Yep. He was one of the main ones. And also, believe it or not, having a good kicker, that made my season one of those years, because I think I had Justin Tucker as my kicker. And I think that might have been the season where I had to win to get in the playoffs. I was like 5-8 or something like that. And I had to win to get in, or it was getting tight towards the end of the season. And I was losing. And the last player I had up and playing was Justin Tucker. And it was down to the last play. And I'm like, I have no shot. He's got to hit this 60-yard field goal for me to win.
And we had compound scoring, so it's not just 60 yards. It's every 5 yards, every 10 yards, every 20 yards, every 30 yards. So 60-yard field goal would be like 30 points.
Yep. And he hit it, and I think there was extra points for it being the game winner or something like that. So
all kind of bonuses. Yeah,
it was a gold mine, and I won the game. So even things like that, having a real good kicker, having a consistent punter, it made a difference.
Yeah, we had punters too, by the way. I know you guys are freaking out.
Yeah, it's like, what? Punters? Yeah. So we had punters back then. So I have found that regardless of what the trends are, if having a top quarterback was most important, or having a top running back or wide receiver, and tight ends, were critical because, in some offenses, they got the most receptions. So regardless of what the trend is, work the waiver wire. I work the waiver wire every week. I'm looking at my roster, and it's like, how can I get better? If I've got somebody on my roster that's even on the bench that's not doing anything, I go look at the waiver wire. Is there somebody I can replace him with? Because let's face it, during the course of a season, guys get hurt. There are bye weeks. and all these different things that can really, mess up your roster. So you got to work at it.
It's work.
Yeah, yeah, and you've got to, and I'm sure you've done stuff like this too. I'd go out there, and even if I didn't need a guy, if I knew somebody that I was basically competing with to get like the last playoff spot or something, I'd jump out there and grab that guy because I knew that would help, the other guy that was trying to get in the playoffs. I'm like, well, you're not getting them. I don't care if I need them or not. I've done that.
Yep.
I've stashed guys like all season. It's like, oh, well, this guy's not going to be available till December. I don't care because once he's available and it's about playoff time, that'll be a boom for me. So just
go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to jump in real quick and give it back to you because I'll probably forget. I've stashed players to the point where like everything was worked out where I couldn't dump them because if I did, I could. It's a roster spot. There was something going on where either all the players are played, and I could either dump him and just dump someone else to make room for another roster spot to do it, or not play that position the entire game because this guy was so good. It's like if Marshall Faulk was like injured reserve, and he's not going to be available for week 7, I'm not dropping him no matter what. I'll have an empty spot, period. Just if I had to drop Marshall Faulk or play an empty player, all right, I'll just go in there with 10 players instead of 11.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's rare, but that's my mindset. Yeah, like you said, stashing players.
Oh yeah, yeah, and for the last few years we did it. We did a keeper league to where you could carry over one guy to the next season, and that definitely helped me.
Oh yeah, I had Tom Brady for 3 years in a row.
Oh yeah, it's like just guys that I'm not letting this guy go. So
yeah, that's right. I remember that.
I know that, and I'll say this and I'll kick it back over to you. So we talked about, watching the games and how fantasy has increased viewership for the NFL. The last season we did ESPN Fantasy, I won the championship and I didn't watch a single game because I was just fed up with the NFL. I'm like, I'm not watching it.
Yeah.
So that last season, and I think my wife wondered, okay, is he really going to stick to this? He's got a fantasy team, and for sure he's going to break down and watch NFL. I didn't. The only game I watched that entire season was the Super Bowl, and that was long after the fantasy season was over with.
Yeah.
So I was able to win the championship without watching it at all. And how I did it was I just kept up online with what was going on. The trends, who was hot, who wasn't, who the sleepers were, all of that stuff. And again, I worked the waiver wire every week. At that point, nobody wanted to trade with me. So that wasn't an option. So I had to do everything either through waiver wire or just, real smart roster moves and who to start and who to sit and all that. So it's harder to do it that way. It can be done. I wouldn't recommend it, but it can be done. And just out of principle, I'm like, I don't care. I don't care if I lose every fantasy game. I'm not watching it. And I was able to win the championship, and it just made it that much sweeter at the time. So yeah, fantasy football, just a lot of fun. I've been fortunate enough to win 5 in ESPN, and I've won a couple more doing Yahoo fantasy. So 7 overall, working on another one. But I mean, it's a lot of fun, and it just makes that kind of competition fun too. And again, not that there's trash talk like there was when we did it in person. It's not like that anymore. Not that it was bad. It was just funny, just
funny. A lot of us work together, neighbors.
Oh yeah. It was bragging rights and all that stuff. And, you make a trade and somebody thinks they got one over on you. And then as soon as you get that person that you think, put you over, they get hurt and they're out for the rest of the season. It's like, It's like, oh man, just snake bit with some of that stuff. But yeah, it's just a lot of fun, and it makes watching the games a little bit more worthwhile when you otherwise wouldn't care about them unless it was your favorite team or your home team. So I'll kick it back over to you. But yeah, fantasy football has been a blast, and apparently we're not the only ones. You've got millions and millions of people that are into it, during the football season. So yeah, it's been a pretty cool experience.
Well, you know me, Greg. Everything I do, I do in excess. I mean, when I was commissioner, I felt like if we're going to spend money on this, I want people to have a good experience. And I would do like weekly rankings, and I would do I do an occasional live show or a video, and just in fun have a rankings and say this is where these team players are, where these teams are, and then I say yeah, you're in the dumpster, and just um, put that out there on a private website that I put up. You remember those? And I will keep an Excel spreadsheet and I still have the spreadsheet of every single game ever played for the 15 years we were doing it.
Oh, it was cool.
Every score, yeah, I put it into a pivot table so I could you could see like charts and graphs and stuff. See how did I compare against the crypt? And the only thing I've said that every team had to have an area and a name. I didn't want just like Burger Bar or like Killer Mike's. I wanted something like an area and a name so it could seem more real. So and so like, my team was the Washington Diplomats, I believe, right? And that was a team that I pulled in from when I was a little kid doing paper football on pieces of paper. I would take some line paper and do like, I don't know if you remember those pencils, take the pencil and slide it, and it kind of did this. I had little leagues there, and I had a team called the Diplomats, and they had like a little top hat with whatever, and logos. I had logos for all the teams and stuff that I created. They were private. A lot of fun memories there. Way to be inner child was definitely fun. Talking about ESPN, they had a really, really good system. They carried the records all the way from the very end to the very beginning, and they were just fantastic. And I didn't like Yahoo because Yahoo didn't give enough flexibility. It didn't seem polished enough. Prior to ESPN, we're using something called sandbox.net. They were really good, but then they went out of business, and I transferred over to ESPN to do it. Very, really good service. And I got some funny experiences. So I won 3 championships. I could have won 5, but I lost 2. And it's funny when it's championship night, when it's only you and another player playing that night. Our championships were only 1 week. It wasn't like some leagues have 2 weeks. They carried over because back then it was only 16 games. They would take it there, but we worked it out. So I think the 15th, we used the bye week. 17th would be the championship week, and so it was 1 week. But when you're playing someone and you have players playing, and it's for the championship, and it's the only player you're with. I think you beat me one time. I think I was winning. I think you came over and you came back and beat me. I was crushed. But there were 2 instances that I could have won, and this still kicks me to this very day. I can still remember it. One was I had Tim Tebow on the bench, and I think I ended up playing a Joe Flacco. I was going against Coney, and that was the game that Tebow went off against the Steelers. You know what I'm talking about? Denver. He went off, and I remember. That was the game. Had I put him in, I would have won. And I'm still mad about that. And another game I had, ironically, was another game I had with Joe Flacco. I had him on the bench, and he went off. So I would have had, championships. Let's put it on the screen here because I'm going to show you guys. So our league actually had these trophies. This is what they were.
Very nice. Yep.
Everyone got one of these. So we 15. How many years we're doing? 15 years. So we gave out 15 of these trophies. I would go out to a website and it had a logo. Only see the NFL logo on there. Our league was called the NFFL, and so I had the logo ingrained on there and the name of the team and the score that you won by, and not who you played on, I don't think, but it's very, very nice trophies. And you have 5 of these, I believe. And I shipped him out to Texas. We had one guy, the Texas, what was his name? Texas High Stakes.
High Stakes, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. they won several. Sent them out to there, and I think Coney won one year. My brother-in-law won 1 year. 1 year he went 0 like I don't know 15 or 16, and won the next year. No, he went 0 because we only had 12 games, right? In the
14,
playoffs.
I think.
14. There you go. And the last 3 were playoff games. So yeah, he went 0-14, and then won the championship the next year.
That was amazing.
That was pretty cool. Good old Ron, man. Good old Ron.
The feel-good
So yeah, let me
story
go
of
back
the
to some
year.
of my notes
Yeah.
here.
When you were talking about
but fantasy
how
really
you
came out with
lost that one
baseball because
championship,
baseball was really the
I
big thing.
lost one
When I was coming up, fantasy
in
baseball
kind of a similar
was what it
fashion.
was because I'm sorry.
No, it reminded me of how I lost the championship one year. So
Sure. Yeah.
I forget who I was playing, and I felt pretty good about my team. But the thing was with our league, the way the games were situated and how many playoff games were, by the time you got to the championship game, a lot of times that was the last week of the regular season for the NFL. So a lot of the starters sat, right? So you got to watch out for that. Up until like kickoff, you got to see, okay, who's going to play? Is this guy going to start? And then like after the first quarter, get sat down or whatever. So the guy that I was playing went out and got Matt Flynn. He was like the backup quarterback.
Oh no! Oh,
Green
that's a
Bay.
legendary. That was legendary.
And he absolutely went nuts. I mean, he put up just monster numbers, so much so
Was that me?
it might have been you, because he did so well.
I think it was me, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that the Raiders got suckered into giving him a big contract to come play for them, and he never lived up to that one performance. And it just crushed my hopes of winning. That one move, and I thought, well, I'm not worried about it. And then I'm looking, because you're watching the whole time, and it's about like, spinning the big wheel on The Price is Right. You see all those numbers just whirling around because he kept just putting up numbers and throwing touchdowns. I'm like, oh, this ain't looking good. Yeah, and that pretty much sunk me. But yeah, in the Yahoo League that I'm in, to prevent that from happening, the regular season ends, I think, a week earlier to keep that from happening. And also, there's 17 games now. So if you keep everything the same, it won't be a factor. But back then, it was a big deal, because sometimes you could sneak out there and get a starter's backup because you knew they were going to get all the touches or whatever and score big. I mean, I did that one year. So, yeah, just stuff like that you have to pay attention to. But, yeah, I'm like, I can't believe it. But, yeah, stuff like that happens.
I'm actually looking in my database here, so if I can find it. I was going on about baseball. Baseball was really the starter of all of this stuff, because baseball is all about stats, right? I mean, it's everything about baseball is a stat. It's really crazy, and baseball is perfect for fantasy. And I did baseball one year where this is interesting, Greg. I was like, I did fantasy baseball on ESPN. And I had all these pitchers like on my team. I was just like, because they had you could have 8 pitchers or 9 pitchers. You could start them all too. And I started on my pitchers, and I was leading the league by I was undefeated. And I was like crushing players, whatever. But I didn't realize that there was a 20 game maximum, right?
Oh wow.
You couldn't play. You could play this. You know what I'm saying? So you can only play, and once you did that many, if you had 6 pitchers, however many games it is, just a max, and you couldn't play any more pitchers the rest of the season. And I didn't know that. So it's 162 games, and so I've already played 80 games. I'm like winning by whatever. But then I didn't win hardly any games after that. I finished the year like, I don't know, 90 and 170, 90 and 70, something like that, in terms of a record. Is that right? Is that right? Is that the right math? I think so. But anyway, yeah. So I kind of blew that. So that was one good, interesting experience. You mentioned individual defensive players. So I think we had 12 people in our league. Yeah, we had 12 people. We had 3 divisions, and the divisions were like the Ranger. It was like the SEAL team and Delta, SEAL, and Ranger. Of course, patriotic. And I think it was 4 teams per division, meaning 12 teams. And you play each one in your division twice, and you play everyone in your league once. So that worked out perfectly, right? So that gives you all your teams. The permutations were perfect, and so that was cool. That we could have division championships, and then we would have different banners for your. If you win your division, you get a banner, and ESPN tracked all of this stuff: division winners, league winners, conference winners, overall champion in terms of like the most points per season. Got a bonus. This wasn't paid. This was basically just for fun. There was a payout based on the top 4 finishers, I believe, and a trophy. So that was kind of cool. But we did have something called IDF, which is what I was trying to get to. Individual defensive players, which a lot of people didn't use those. But I felt if you have 12 teams in a league, the talent pool is finite, right? So if it's a 8-man team league, then the talent is pretty easy to disperse. But if you have 12 teams and then you have a roster of, let's say, 12 or 13, 12 or 13, I don't know how many we had, then the talent level goes way down real fast. There's only so many running backs. There's only so many wide receivers. There's only so many whatever. But if you throw in defensive players and an occasional punter, which is just fun because you hate to lose by a punter, and then it adds way more ability to actually score points, even if you don't have a really, really good team. If you have a really good defense, you can get 20 points per player, 60 points per game, and that's a lot. Because an average score will be somewhere around 150 to whatever, and a high score would be over 200. So if you get around 150 or above, you're going to have a really good year. But sometimes it's hard to get to 150 if you don't have the wide receiver or the quarterback or whatever. But if you have, if you do different things, it makes it more competitive. That's what I wanted. So that was cool. And also you mentioned you're in other leagues too. I think one year I did five in 1 year, and that was just way too much. Because I would do. Here's the thing. I would do one league here, one league at my softball team, and then another league on somewhere else. And the other 2 were just those other leagues that you just sign up for that you don't really care about. Just because it's all free. You go on Yahoo, you go on ESPN, just pick a team and just see how you do.
Join like a public league or whatever with a bunch of people you don't know. Yeah,
exactly. And it's really easy because if you're in 2 or 3 leagues, you already know all the players. You only there's no research, right? You know who the players are because you've already researched your big league, and you can kind of go and do the other thing else. So that was cool. What else? Oh yeah. So you mentioned the Carolina Panthers. So the 1 year that I got the NFL package 1 year, I just moved to that area that where I was and where I was and who my neighbor was. I moved there, and then the first year I got a satellite dish because I wanted to watch the Redskins. And I was so excited for that particular season. Got the satellite dish in my yard, got the NFL package. The red zone was, I think that was new then. And I was just like, fantastic. And of course the Redskins sucked. And the season wasn't nearly as exciting as I thought it was going to be. But the fans who did make it worth the effort, because even if your team is terrible, there's still hope, right? And in some ways, it's more exciting when your team wins the championship because there's actual money tied to it, because it wasn't an exorbitant amount of money, but it was just enough to pay the bills and keep the lights on. It wasn't, you got like $50, $60, something like that plus a trophy. No, it wasn't over the top. And I'm probably outing myself now with with that, but I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations are over. I can say it freely. Let's see. That's all I'm gonna say for that. I think that's. Oh no, I think I'm good. Yeah, that's all I have in terms of reflection. Let me ask you, Greg, since you're in one this year, I'm curious about this.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference? Because I haven't been in since, I think, right after COVID. I think right after the George Floyd era, I was just disdained and the whole kneeling and all that crap. And I just didn't, my heart really wasn't in it anyway. because I was trying to build this YouTube channel, and I was taking a lot of my time, and I put my effort into that. So it freed me to do what I'm doing now and
Right.
make this successful. But because I've been out of it for about 3 or 4 years. What is different between now and the NFL and when we were doing it in our heyday?
I think one of the main things that's different now is, how can I put this? So going back to what I talked about before, is as far as like draft strategy, I know that the temptation is to go out and pick, you know, the big flashy name type players. And I think every year I see somebody make the same mistake. It's like, okay, for instance, Josh Allen, he's like one of the top quarterbacks, in the league. And you might be tempted to pick him in the first or second round. Just a bit of advice to everybody that's listening: never pick a quarterback in the first, second, third, or even fourth round. I never pick a quarterback before like rounds 4 or 5. And the reason for that is, to me, it's more important because the first players that are going to go are other skill position players. It's like, okay, Jamar Chase is going to go first. Saquon Barkley is going to go first.
Richardson.
CeeDee Lamb and all of these, wide receivers, Christian McCaffrey, they're going to go first. It's going to be more important to grab as many of those guys as possible before you grab a quarterback. I've got Baker Mayfield as my quarterback right now. I can win a championship with him. I don't need Josh Allen or some of these other, top tier type quarterbacks, or Patrick Mahomes and, a couple other guys that you immediately think about. I think the difference now is because back when we first started, playing fantasy, you had running backs that would carry the ball 20, 25, 30 times, Yep. It's not really like that anymore. You've got more teams that kind of split carries, or even if you have a clear lead back, they may only play like first, second down. You're going to bring in a third down back, and they may cut into, how many points, your guy gets. Or if it's like the Detroit Lions, where you've got Jahmyr Gibbs, he's going to get you a bunch of points, but David Montgomery may cut into that a little bit. So you have to be kind of mindful of that. And also, quarterbacks just aren't as premium as they used to be. It's not critical to have a big name quarterback because, again, they get hurt, sometimes they have off weeks. And I would rather have a quarterback that's going to consistently get me, depending on the league you're in. So right now, Yahoo, I'd rather have a quarterback that will consistently get me 25, 27, occasionally get me 30, than to have a quarterback where I had to pick him like in the first or second round that may get me a few more, but I'm missing some of those other big pieces that I could have gotten in the first 3 rounds because I picked a quarterback so early. A lot of it is still the same. You still have to put in the same kind of work as far as working the waiver wire, trying to work trades, paying it. Now, I've never paid attention to picking guys according to when their bye weeks are. I've never coordinated that. I'd figured I'll deal with it when I get to it. So if I have 4 or 5 guys that have the same bye week, I'll just figure it out then. But I don't let that kind of thing stop me. So I don't analyze it to that level of detail. But some things are different as far as that goes. You've got some teams that and one guy that comes to mind is Puka Nakua. He's a gold mine as far as fantasy because he gets a ton of targets, but he also gets nicked up a lot. So you kind of have to keep that in the back of your mind. And, stashing guys, that's still important as far as, late in the season. I'm stashing Joe Burrow right now. I'm stashing Brandon Ayuk right now, hoping that they'll come back within the next couple weeks so I can make a run for the playoffs. But, some things are different. And like I said before, it kind of runs along the way the league is as a whole now, as far as what you should prioritize. But a lot of it is still the same. It really hasn't changed a ton since you were in it last. But I would say that it's important to have a back that gets a bunch of touches, and it's also important. Tight ends are important now too. You'd be surprised at what a difference having a really good prolific tight end is. If you've got Trey McBride or the Warren kid in Indianapolis, and once upon a time George Kittle or Kelsey, I mean, if your tight end is scoring more points than all you wide receivers and running backs, then then you've got a gold mine there. And that kind of reminds me, and see if you remember this. I think the first season that I did fantasy, you could start 2 quarterbacks if you wanted to, because there was a flex.
That was a mistake. That was a mistake. Yeah.
Yeah. And people started complaining, oh, well, that doesn't go along with the spirit of what this is supposed to be. And
And I agree. I messed it up.
But I mean, you could do it. There was nothing and a lot of guys did it. And again, back when quarterbacks were scoring a bunch of points, you could really get over doing that. And I'm glad you put in, the rule where you couldn't do that anymore. But yeah, that was a loophole. You could actually do that. But I think now, a lot of it is pretty much the same. There are nuances that are kind of different. And even though I would say, drafting, a top name quarterback isn't important, you still have to have a decent quarterback. I mean, you can't go week in and week out and have Justin Fields as your starting quarterback. You will not win. I'm just, everything has its limitations. You're not going to start Bryce Young and win a fantasy championship. You're just not. You've got to get somebody that's going to put up numbers that people don't think of when you think about, well, I got to get that guy as my fantasy quarterback. A prime example is like Matthew Stafford or Goff for Detroit, or like I said, Baker Mayfield. And believe it or not, when he's not turning the ball over, Dak Prescott even, mid-level guys like that, you can still win championships with. But Jacoby Brissett, no. If you're starting him, you're not going to win anything unless you're in a bind and there's nobody else. But surely you can find somebody to get you by. But yeah, a lot of it is the same. It just goes back to, you got to work at it. You got to keep up with, and it's matchups. It's who the quarterback is. Yes. If you've got somebody on the same team that's kind of eating into touches, you got to keep all that stuff in mind. I think we used to call them touchdown hawks or something like that. Somebody that may only get 5 or 6 carries, but that's who they put in at the goal line, and that just steals, one of your running backs' thunder. I've had that happen to me before, but
there's something about.
But overall, I mean, a lot of it is pretty much the same, even though the game has changed a lot. You just have to kind of stay on top of what the trends are, and if you can and I'll mention, one more thing, and then I'll turn it back over to you. Another thing that I've never been able to do a whole lot, because I think people were kind of leery about trading with me because they didn't want to, help me win a championship or anything like that. So it was hard for me to get somebody to trade. I think you and I worked a trade one year because
I didn't trade much. But
when I look through the list of guys in our league, I go through and say, yeah, he's never going to trade with me. Yeah, he's not. So I can think of a couple guys, you and another guy, you probably know who it is, that was fairly open to making trades, but otherwise not so much. But if there's a guy on another team that I'm like, I got to get this guy. This guy can potentially make or break my season. I got to get him. So you look at who you've got. Well, to back up a little bit, you go through and look at all the other teams in the league, especially the teams that are struggling, because they're probably going to be a little bit more desperate and a little bit more willing to make a deal with you, especially if there is a position that they are woefully lacking in. Because some years I had like 2 really good quarterbacks, and I think one year I might have had 3. I rarely carried more than 2 quarterbacks, but I think one year I might have had 3. And they were all pretty decent. It's like, I don't need 3 quarterbacks. Or I've got a glut of running backs. I could part with one. You find where they are shallow as far as their roster. Oh, well, I see. And that's back when we communicated a lot more. Yeah, I see you need a wide receiver. I've got 3 of them. Take your pick. I really want this guy, just to try to get things in motion. And you try to sweeten the pot. It's like, I tried to not trade guys that are in my starting lineup. I always try to trade guys that are on my bench, guys that I'm not going to miss if I get rid of. But by the same token, guys that somebody else could desperately use because they got a bunch of injuries or whatever. So that's how I try to do it. And I also almost always offer more players than I'm asking for in return to kind of sweeten the pot. It's like, oh, well, you're not offering your best guy, but you're offering 2 or 3 kind of mid-tier guys for the one guy that I really want. And that's how I usually do it. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But if you can pull off a really good trade, I mean, that could make or break your season. The problem is trying to get people to trade with you. Because if you win a lot, you're hard pressed to find somebody, even if they really need guys that you have. They're like, yeah, I'm not going to help you win another one, or I'm not going to help you do better. So there's that, but it's all in fun. And that's just part of it that really helps you get into what's going on watching the games, because I'll be honest, if it weren't for fantasy football, I would probably not watch a whole lot of the NFL. I might would watch the Panthers a little bit. Maybe that's it, because I really wouldn't care about any of the other games, to be quite honest. So fantasy has got me more interested in watching the NFL than I was even 5 years ago, especially. And there was a point in time where I watched every game that was on, not so much anymore because the product is just kind of hard to watch. And, the political stuff is still hanging around. So I don't watch as much as I used to, but I'm more interested than I was. And it's basically because of fantasy football. And I think there are a lot of people that are right where I'm at as far as fantasy is concerned. And it's like, well, yeah, I really don't care about the games a lot, but I care about them in regards to what it's doing for my fantasy team. And again, the NFL, they don't care why you're watching. They just care that you're watching.
Right.
And it's been a boom for them. So yeah, just a lot of fun. And, the NFL is going to keep on trucking regardless of what the product is for a long time. I think a lot of it hinges upon how popular fantasy football remains. Now, if you ever see it fall off, then I think the NFL should get concerned because you're more casual viewers that were watching because of fantasy. Well, if that dips, then I think their viewership will dip. But as long as it's still chugging along, I think the NFL is just fine. They've had some dips here and there, but it's such a big machine that it would just take a lot for it to really suffer as far as viewership. And fantasy has been a big reason why they remain strong all these years. So yeah, I'll kick it back to you. But yeah, I was really looking forward to doing this episode because the only notes I needed were around the numbers as far as how many people are involved with it, and how many games fantasy football participants watch as opposed to non. But everything else was off the top of my head because I've lived it for however many years. So I'll.
Yeah, I'm actually. I'm not ignoring you. I'm actually pulling down some. I found the all the database. I put a lot of work into this. So yeah, but Greg, what you just said there is really good because I mean, it's good that you were able to, because this ended in 2019. That's the last season that I have here that must have been 2020. I don't think I actually tracked the actual 2020. Maybe I did because George Floyd happened May of 2020, and that would have been I may not have done it because 2020 was a crazy year, because of the whole COVID thing, but and George Floyd thing. So, but yeah, I'm looking at this here. You finished in second place that year, 19. You lost to Texas, looks like, and I'm trying to find the actual. Yeah, because I did a handbook every year. I basically updated it so that people could actually have an idea of what the season was going to look like because some rule changes and whatnot.
Oh yeah, and do you remember when you I think every week recorded
go ahead,
analysis and stuff on how each team was doing, and you figured up playoff scenarios and all that stuff, what this team needed to do to get in. I mean, you did an awesome job. I mean, it made being in that league just so easy because you did so much work to just make it that much fun. I mean, I'd look forward to it every week, and it's like, trends and all of this stuff, Davidson County Bandits, they're trending down because of these things. And I actually named my fantasy team after the semi-pro team that I played for to, pay homage to them. So, but yeah, what you did was just amazing. I know it took a lot of work, but it just made it that much more fun to be in the league, all the things that you did to make it fun. But I know it took a lot of work, but yeah, we really appreciated it. It was a blast, all the work you put in to make it really good.
Yeah, I know the audience doesn't care about this. This is probably me being selfish, but we started in 2003, and I won't read the names because that's people's names. I don't want to put it out there, but here are the names of the teams that won. I count from 2003 all the way up to 2018. Flinttown D-Boys, Texas High Stakes, Washington Diplomats, Patterson Rough Riders, Little Rock Goof Troop, Texas High Stakes again. They were a powerhouse.
They were.
Davidson County won their first championship that year in 2009.
All right.
Newark Brick City Brigade. You know who that guy is.
Oh, yeah. Lights out.
Washington Diplomats, we won our second one in 2011. Detroit Borat Ballers. That was because he always was garbage, but he picked one off just like Little Rock did that one year. And then North Philly Hustlers, he finally got his.
Oh boy, yeah, never heard the end of it.
Because the Eagles hadn't won one by that time, but he was happy with that. And I won my third in 2014, and Texas won their third in 2015, and the rest is all you, man. You're the first one to win back-to-back championships. You won in 2016 and 17, and then Texas won again. He won his fourth one in 2018. That's when he beat you again. So you were always competitive in that, and I think you won one more, two more after that. So, yeah. So yeah, it was a lot of fun and a lot of fun. I have to admit that it was a pleasure doing it. I just forgot how much work was put into it. And the funny thing about I gotta say this, I'd be remiss if I don't say this, is that how much stress there is if your team is competitive. And let me just bring this up because I got to talk. We talked about the draft. We talked about it a little bit, but fantasy football drafts are exciting, and I have a memorable experience. You reminded me about having all the computers at my house back then because that's before we had cell phones that could do what they do now. We had cell phones, but they really couldn't do what they do now. So we still needed to have a laptop because cell phones you still didn't have to quite the interface. And that was funny. I was borrowing computers from people and networking. It had wires all through the house. And then a funny one was when I was in my softball team, we were actually playing a game and the draft was actually during the game. And I'm in the outfield. I told Cam, I said, I gotta be in the outfield because my draft's coming. So I'm literally in the outfield doing my draft myself, hoping the ball doesn't come to me. I said, put me in right field because no one ever hits the ball to right field. And of course, one time someone hit the ball to right field. And I had to actually stop playing my draft and get the ball in, throw it in. But a lot of fun, Greg. I mean, we could probably talk these stories offline and just go off, and because you reminded me so much about that. And I know people who have done football leagues in your own private league with your own your own friends and family. I'm sure, even though this is for us, it's purely personal and anecdotal. I know you have similar stories, and I'm sure this is bringing up a lot of memories that you have as well. And I'd be curious to know what you guys think about your experiences in fantasy football and how that impacted you. Let us know as well. Greg, is there anything you want to talk about more about this? I mean, I'm sure we could go on more, but I think it's going to be more interpersonal and not very entertaining to the audience, other than the fact of my amusement and the excitement coming through this microphone. I'm literally going back to memory lane here. I'm going looking at my database, and I was like, holy man, I'm not trying to tap my own self, but that's just how I am. I'm just the kind of guy. If I get into something, I become inattentive. I just push it, which is one of the reasons why the channel grew so much, because I didn't stop messing with it. It comes with its own problems too. I don't recommend necessarily doing it. You have to have balance. But on that note, Greg, do you have anything else you want to kind of chime in about on this? No, I'm sorry. One more thing I got to say. One more thing I got to say, and then I get toss stuff to you. I wrote a note about this. Tom Brady, one of the last quarterbacks I picked in my because Tom Brady never really had, booming numbers. They were always good, but they were never like a Kurt Warner. They were never like a Peyton Manning. They were never like a Drew Brees. Those guys, but he was consistent. Yes. And I remember the guy who was the owner of the North Philly Hustlers was like, "Why?" He was laughing at me. "Why are you picking Tom Brady?" He's like 90 years old, right? He's like in this. I'm like, because he never gets hurt. He's like, "Oh, yeah, that's good."
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what I'm going to get from him. I can put him in. I know what I'm going to get. I don't have to worry about him. Put him in there, set him and forget it. Quarterback is done. Maybe throwing a person on the bye week, and of course the Patriots, they're going to be sitting him in the end. But other than those two situations, I carried one quarterback when I had Tom Brady, and the only time I brought him in was when it was a bye week.
Yeah.
That to me is an advantage. So anyway, Greg, back to what you were saying.
It is. Yeah. So I had Tom Brady one year, basically for the same reason you just mentioned. He was very consistent. He wasn't going to get you, 40 or 50 or anything else like that, but he consistently got you numbers, and that's what it was all about. But yeah, as we talk through this, it just reminds me of other stuff, too many, situation and memories to talk about, but I can vividly remember how, a lot of times there was like a mad dash to log in to start the draft because back then auto pick was like the kiss of death. I never did well when I had auto pick. So I tried to log in like early, like half an hour, because back then there were more technical challenges that we had to deal with. And it's like if I couldn't get in time to pick, I'm like, oh, this is just bad. This is just, and my wife will tell you, you know, if we were on vacation or just whatever, it's like, look, because it was usually 7:30 Labor Day weekend is usually about when we would do the draft. And it didn't matter whether we were on vacation or wherever we were. I told my wife, okay, at 7:30, I need to be someplace where I can log on and do the fantasy draft. So yeah, and then when you're not able to do that, all the other dudes would chuckle. It's like, yeah, auto pick just picked and somebody you didn't want. It was never
Yeah.
anybody I wanted.
You have 3 kickers now.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you just picked the kicker in the 4th round or whatever. It's like, oh no. And you spent the rest of the season trying to recover from that. I don't
Exactly. It's yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that it reminds me of, and we can wrap it up, but I took it so seriously back then that I actually bought magazines that did the fantasy football previews, trying to plot out who I was going to target when we did the draft. And I'd write down notes and say, okay, well, if I can't get this guy, I'm going to try to get this guy. And I just had it, notes and all this other stuff. But then after a while, when I figured out those notes really didn't help me a whole lot, I just stopped doing it and just kind of went.
I remember that.
Yeah, kind of went by feel. And that worked a whole lot better. But no, I was like, I'd buy magazines, not a bunch of them, but like every year, like July, August, I'd get a fantasy football magazine and I'd go through and try to get some pointers on who I should target and all that stuff. It was serious business to us back then. But once I figured out, it's like, yeah, none of that stuff's really helping. It's a matter of being able to, adjust and outwork everybody else, and with some luck sprinkled in there too. That never hurts. But yeah, all in all, it was just so much fun, and I'm just so glad, we were able to, bond over that, and through the years become close friends with, fantasy football being the thing that kind of ties together, and some other stuff too, of course. But fantasy football kind of got it all started as far as our friendship, and I'm grateful for that. So yeah, it's been a blast, and I'll try to keep things going as far as trying to win some more championships. It tickles me at this point that I can still at least have the opportunity to win some more, and I'll do it as long as I have fun doing it at this point. But yeah, it's been a blast, and I'm glad we've been able to share that all these years.
Yeah, and I didn't do these banners just for me, by the way. I did them for every champion. So if we win championship, I designed you a banner using Photoshop. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah.
Of course, mine were like, I think they're all very, very good. But do you still have yours? I can send them to you if you.
Yeah, send them to me. I probably got them somewhere, but probably not anywhere I can quickly put my hands on. But yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. I appreciate you doing this show, man, because it was a throwback. I didn't expect I'd enjoy it quite this much, because it just brings back a lot of memories and just things we did, back then, before we had the AI, before we had internet that could do what it does now, before we had the cable things, before we had a culture that was divided by political divisions in terms of, what it is now, where you basically, we're on two sides of different factions in this country. Whereas back then you have policy issues, but it was nothing divisive where we ended friendship overnight. Times were a lot different. I would love to get back to those times when we could just interact and relate and have fun and be men, hang out and be just stupid. And actually, we had a female in our group as well, and she did very well as well. So, but she was very much a football person as well because she was part of the A&T family of football players. So, I think her son played A&T at one point. So, it's just a lot of fun, man. A lot of fun, and I thank you for picking the subject matter because it really made me feel really good doing it.
Oh yeah, thank you.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed that, and hope you get a little insight of what our Greg and my relationship through the years. As you know, we've been around a long time, and so you can kind of feel that from this. And I think that's good to know more about this podcast in terms of us as people and as friends. And hope that comes forward in that discussion that we had today and future discussions. As you know, that this is a good reference and frame point of where we became friends and are still friends. So. That being said, I will thank everyone for hanging out with us on the Old Girl Games podcast. My name is Kyle, and Greg is here as well. And thank you guys so much, and God bless you. And we will see you in the next one.
All right. Take care.